And so the challenge or the goal is to find the need and to fill it. Today, therefore, we're going to have introductions. I want to know, have you introduce yourselves so the whole group knows who you are and what you feel. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the 5 questions of life, and I'll tell you what those are. We're going to compare the differences between a nonprofit and a for-profit. We're not going to write it today, but we're going to review what a problem statement is or a need statement, because that's going to be your assignment. I love assignments. So if we could do that, I'll introduce myself last. I don't know everybody. So just to give your name and really to find out why you're here, what you think, what need is it that you believe that you can fulfill in the world or through your business or nonprofit. I don't know which you have decided to do or if you've decided, except for maybe Nicole.
I did go ahead and mute everybody because it was really noisy in the background. Okay. And so what I'll do is just unmute each person at a time and then give them the chance to talk, okay, and then mute them because it was a little noisy, so I went ahead and muted everybody. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with Stacy. I'm gonna unmute you and you can answer Brenda's questions there.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Stacy Kirk, and as we had started to say, I'm almost an hour out from Peoria. I've decided through Daryl Kirk, who is my brother-in-law. I do my own cleaning business and my husband does lawn care, and we kind of work together at both. So I'm just here to learn. I'm like a sponge. I just want to absorb it all and figure out what I'm doing in life.
I love it.
Very interesting.
That's awesome.
Very interesting. Okay.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, go ahead, Nairobi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nairobi Wheeler, and I I've decided I met Kim, a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago.
It's been a while.
And so, I have a small business. It's called Striving Potential Academy. I design online courses in, right now, just foreign language and African American history. So I'm just learning, want to learn some different ideas and strategies to help my business grow.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thanks, Nairobi. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Kim. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Reese. And we talked, of course, in a lot of detail at last month's meeting. Still looking for options and opportunities. So I have a fairly active web design business that I started about 8 years ago. Kind of put on hold when I had 7 part-time jobs shortly after that. But I'm getting back into that again. All my life, I've been passionate about special events and baking. So I'm looking to combine the 2 into 1, looking at a business called Emerald Oasis. That would combine the special events, baking with a mini cheesecake bakery and a bubble tea shop, have a small event center, do the web design, and then do dream manager coaching because I was just certified as a dream manager through Floyd Consulting out of Florida.
Excellent, excellent.
So still looking for opportunities for that commercial kitchen to get it started.
Okay.
Where it's going to be a perfect spot when it comes along. I know it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, Tim.
Hello. Whoop.
We can see you.
Oh, I am unmuted.
Yeah,
sorry.
I am muted. Yeah.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm Tim. I'm from the McMahon Group. I'm just kind of here to learn. Short and sweet.
Well, have you thought about starting a nonprofit or going into business or?
A little bit off and on, and then things get in the way, but a little bit off and on I have.
Okay. I know
Awesome.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Everybody has special gifts, so hopefully we'll get to
It's just finding the right way to harness them.
Right,
so.
right.
For
Thank
sure.
you very much.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, Maria.
Hello.
Oh, yay, there you are, video. Woohoo. I like video, then we can see everybody. Stay on video.
Oh, I hate the way I look. That's why I don't like
You
video.
look beautiful.
Thanks. So I have a lot of stuff going on right now. I'm at home since one of my things that I do, I'm a teacher's aide in a bilingual classroom. So we're not in school. So I'm focusing on Tianguis, the Mexican outdoor market, and still planning that's gonna continue, start working on it. And then I'm trying to think, I had talked to Brenda already and then Kim a little bit about maybe going into being a not-for-profit maybe next year, because I do want to do a lot of community, giving back to the community, and maybe that is a better way for me to go. But I just want to learn to make sure that the business that I have right now is I'm doing everything, to having all the check marks, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and then see, if the nonprofit is probably, if that's going to be the route to go. And then I do have another business that's on the side. It's Ambit Energy. And then there I just help people lower their electric bill. So I have a lot of stuff going on because I'm a single mom of 4 kids, and then I'm trying to finish school so I could get my degree.
Wow.
Because that's really my true passion, but I don't like to just stand still, because during the summertime and stuff, during vacations, I want to be active in the community. So that's why I have a lot of stuff going on, because I don't want to just sit around for a couple of months. I like to be active in the community.
If you need someone to get something done, ask a busy person.
Yeah. So that's me.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria.
Mhm.
Okay, so all right, everybody's muted, but please know you can unmute yourself, okay? So you can unmute yourself when you need to speak, and by all means, this is a small group, and like Brenda said, she wants it to be interactive, as well as you can use the chat screen. If you click chat and you want to send some messages, ask some questions, I'll be watching the chat for Brenda, and I will let her know if there's anything that pops in there. Okay, there's also there's a button where you can, if you know where that's at, you can raise your hand if you want to. But honestly, in such a nice little group, you can just unmute yourself and share. Okay, sound good?
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, as you know, my name is Brenda Grove. I couldn't decide which I wanted to do, so in terms of being a nonprofit or a for-profit, so I did both. And I began with a for-profit to help people learn how to write business plans. And I decided and I love it. I love doing it. I still do that for people. And I decided when I moved to Florida that I really wanted to work with nonprofits. I wanted to help people learn how to serve others. And that's where I've spent probably 70% of my time working with nonprofit organizations. I've learned a lot about grant writing and just the nature of an organization, what creates a organization that has the capacity and position itself for funding. So I really love doing that. I like working with young people in particular, but everybody in general. So I wanted to start today with just 5 questions, and I heard a few of you mention this in your introductions. There are what they call the 5 questions of life that all people grapple with. They ask themselves, look for the answers throughout life. And I apologize for not having put all this on my screen so I could share it with you, but I'll send it to you.
We'll email it to you.
These are the 5 questions. They are questions that the entire human race has to grapple with, because people want to know. The first question, for example, is who am I? Who am I really? And it's a question of identity. How do, you know, why, how did I, as it relates to creation, what is my relationship with the entire universe? So it's an identity question. Who am I? The second question is, where am I from? And this is not a question of ethnicity. This is a question of potential. Where am I from? Your strength. Your strength. Given your strengths or your gifts that evolve over life, you know, how can I use them? So where am I from is the second question. The third question is, why am I here? Why did God put me on this universe? What is it that I'm to do? What is the purpose of my existence? So again, we start with identity. Why am I here? Now, who am I rather? Then where am I from? Which is about potential. Why am I here is about purpose, your existence in life. Number 4 is, what can I do? What can I do is a question of ability and maybe partially your strength. What ability do you have to do whatever it is that's in your heart's desire? How has life equipped you to do those things? And then the last thing is a question of destiny. Where am I going? So given I know who I am, where I'm from, why I'm here, what can I do? They will all, answering those questions all lead to destiny and the roadmap to get there. And I pose those or share those with you because it really helps us. It'll help us in the process of centering on, you know, why we're here, what we're really going to do. Is it going to be a for-profit or a nonprofit? And within that possibility, you know, how do I fit? How can I best serve? If I'm on the creative side, like Miss Nicole, who does a lot of different things, you know, where am I really going to focus my attention? Because everybody can take many roads, but you don't want to spend your life searching without really focusing on the thing that's key to your DNA, so to speak. Today we're gonna focus on what they call a problem statement, that need that we're trying to resolve. And they call it problem statement, but it could be a need, it could be an innovation. It just depends on each individually. Now this class is really kind of structured, training is structured to explore the possibility of whether or not you want to be a nonprofit or a for-profit. Both are businesses and they do share many factors in common. They diverge, and I want to share that with you in a few minutes. They have some unique differences that hopefully they will help you decide better on which road you want to take. Starting a business, for-profit or nonprofit, is still a lot of work. But if you have passion around it and you love it and you see how you're fulfilling that need, work becomes, energy for me. It becomes energy. You love it. You stay up all night doing it. You would do it if nobody paid you to do it. That's how I think of it. If you find something that's in your heart that you would do it, even if no one paid you to do it, that's probably where you're gonna, be most successful and happy, because you want to be happy. You don't want to just work. Some of the differences I'm just gonna have to do with, and I'll go over them, then I'll go back and give the distinctions, have to do with the type of entity that you're going to form, whether it's a 1020, you have to submit a 1023 application to be a 501c3, or if you want to be on the for-profit side, whether you're going to be a sole proprietor, have a partnership, a LLC, a corporation, or benefits corporation. There are different types of corporations you could have. So the first question, or what distinguishes a for-profit from a nonprofit, is the type of entity that you decide to establish. The other is the time to form the organization. For a for-profit, it takes about 3 to 6 months to put that structure in place. I'm sorry, for a nonprofit, it takes about 3 to 6 months to put that structure in place. But for a for-profit, you just go online, you incorporate, basically. Hopefully you've written a business plan that helps you make these decisions in the process. But for for-profit, it's really quite easy. It's helpful to know what type of entity, though, you want to form, because there are tax consequences for doing the respective types of organizations. The other issue that I would compare a for-profit from nonprofit has to do with sale. For a nonprofit, you're really selling service. You can sell products, but your primary purpose is to serve and to deliver services for a nonprofit organization. Whereas for a for-profit, it could be product or service too. Oftentimes it's a product, a t-shirt, I don't know, a chair, a television. It's usually on the product side, but it could be a service. So again, for a nonprofit, service usually is the priority. For a for-profit, many times providing products, but it's not limited. There's no fine defining line that makes it be one way or the other. But based upon your mission and what you're trying to accomplish, you'll see your time is going to be more spent in a nonprofit on delivering services. Another distinct difference is your workforce. For a nonprofit, you have volunteers. Now, volunteers are similar to employees, except you don't pay them. You can pay them, in rewarding them or acknowledging their contributions to the organization. But volunteers, by definition, are unpaid employees. And of course, then for-profit, your workforce are generally employees. You don't find people that you're going to bring to your organization and ask them to work without pay, and not just any pay. There are guidelines for what you have to pay an employee. Another distinction is control. For a for-profit, it's the board of a nonprofit. It's the board of directors. Every nonprofit is required to have a board of directors. It's not an independent organization that one person calls all the shots. You wouldn't receive your 501c3 determination if there was just one person in the organization. You could do that with a foundation, but not with a nonprofit in general. And the board of directors is a group of people that are also not paid. So your board of directors actually make the decisions. They are the governing body for a nonprofit and make the decision, all the decisions, including decisions about you who might be the founder. For a nonprofit, many nonprofits don't know this, but when they form their organization, they're forming it to fulfill a mission. And once that mission, or as that mission is accomplished, if they're organizing the organization properly, they will step aside in a sense, or the board of directors can really get rid of them. Because the goal is to fulfill the mission. It has nothing to do with the person per se, even if that is the founding person. So in a nonprofit organization, the founder, if it's structured properly, over time will take a back seat in terms of how the organization moves forward. There are a few that refuse to relinquish positions like that, but it causes all kinds of problems in nonprofit organizations because it's the board of directors who makes the decisions about, as it relates to funding, as it relates to personnel, as relates to assets. All those things are the responsibility of the board, who, by the way, are held accountable, legally held accountable for that organization. It's not the founder necessarily. You have any questions about that?
I know board of directors that get paid.
If they do, it's because they're in a for-profit organization. If it's a nonprofit organization, they cannot give benefit to themselves and be paid unless they have a particular expertise, right? Unless they have a particular expertise, but the board has to approve that activity. It's not, generally, it's not an ongoing activity. It's, so what kind of organizations are?
I just know the other thing I've seen happen is the same board of directors never changes. I've seen that happen. Is that legal, or is that depends on the board of directors? Is that the bylaws that they create?
I've never seen a set of bylaws that cause the same board of directors to be in place. There's supposed to be a process in place for nominating new board members. Again, the idea is that that organization grows and continues the mission, and there's no requirement necessarily that the same people are the only ones that can fulfill that mission. Ordinarily, there's a process to nominate new officers over time. Usually board of directors may serve, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years. That's usually set in the bylaws. But you don't get new ideas, growth, if you keep the same people. I've just never seen that happen. I've seen situations where the founder stayed in position. The other challenge is that if that organization is seeking funding over time, and that's funders know and learn about that status, you're not in the best position to get funding, because that's like a business where you're trying to get benefits of having that 501c3 tax elimination. So it's not good. If they're filing their paperwork with IRS, which they're supposed to do annually, and I'm not really clear about how IRS monitors that, but over time, it's reported on GuideStar, so any funder can go on GuideStar and see who those directors are over time, and they really won't be that receptive to investing in that organization when it seems like they're not structured properly.
Makes sense.
I see you shaking your head, Nicole. You know about that. So have you seen that happen, Nicole?
I have, yes. I've had some unique experiences with nonprofit boards, you could say. In fact, that was initially the focus of my doctoral degree. I was planning to focus on effective recruitment. What was it? Effective recruitment, selection, and training of nonprofit board members. It's kind of evolved since then. Doesn't quite have the same focus, but initially that's what I was looking at based on prior experiences.
Very interesting. Well, I just, just personally, I know a lot of nonprofits. Sometimes they'll begin with family members or best friends and that kind of thing. But there is a requirement from IRS that they are not board of directors. They're supposed to have independent board of directors, number one. So they're supposed to have people on their boards that are not have close ties like that. Over time, if you're the same board of directors, you're going to have close ties, but not family, not close friends. You can have them, but maybe 51% of those people should be independent. So that guarantees, or at least supports the opportunity for people to make independent decisions that really further the organization as opposed to the individuals. So I always discourage people from having their boards filled with their family and friends. A lot of times families and friends won't object. They just go along. They go along with the decisions, and decisions may not benefit the people that are being served as much as it benefits them. Okay. And so I thought Kim was going to say that she knew organizations where board members were paid that were in for-profit situations. And you find that a lot, especially for large corporate organizations. They pay their boards, but that's a different. They don't get any tax benefit from doing that. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. Sustainability is another issue. Again, I was talking about that, about founders can be voted off the board. So that's a sustainability issue. It's called, actually, the term for it is called founder syndrome. When you have the same board chairperson after 20 years. I actually was with an organization that had such an individual, and it was horrible. So that person, they really pretty much made all the decisions. They brought on only their favorite people who would say yes. When I came to the organization, my goal was to help sort some of that out. The organization was being audited by several federal organizations because they hadn't used funding properly. And it was a big problem. It was a big problem. So I finally left. So the terminology for that is founder syndrome. So all I'm saying to say is that if you want a nonprofit organization, don't move forward with the idea that you're always going to be the leader. You really want the mission of that organization to be accomplished. And if you're training people and preparing people properly, it doesn't have to be you.
Yeah, and I'll just hop in and say, I feel like that happens. I think people start not-for-profits when they plan on being the person in control. Mm-hmm. That they go down the not-for-profit path because a lot of times they think they'll get funding. And really, they're just trying to fund their business. And I see that happening. So I definitely think that you got to be very clear. If you want to open a business and you want it to be your business and you have a mission-driven business and it's a business, it's not a not-for-profit. You can have a mission-driven business. But like what you're saying, Brenda, you really have to have that deep conversation to say, are you just wanting to build an organization that's going to serve the need of this not-for-profit, or are you wanting a business for yourself that you're going to work and, so.
And plus, if you're receiving funding, a lot of that funding, you're a public charity, number one. So funding coming from individuals who might donate or give to that organization, right, and you're taking it for your own benefit, that is definitely a big no-no.
Integrity, that's wrong.
And if you're found out, you're gonna lose your 501c3. And the funders, if you're in most communities, the word just gets around one way or the other. You're gonna go on that list, and you'll never get funding again. But you're right. Yeah. There are people who do that because they think they can get grant funding, but use it to their own benefit. So it gives a bad name to the nonprofits that are really trying to deliver good services in the community. Mm-hmm. That's like a pet peeve of mine. So I spent too much time on it, but that's a pet peeve of mine. Okay, the next issue is salary. Again, it ties together. Salaries usually for nonprofits, they're kind of standards, and you can really research and find they're usually reasonable based upon the nature of the work to be completed, especially for like the CEOs. it's usually a reasonable salary. For in a for-profit, it could be anything. It's whatever that organization decides it could be. But there are some standards for nonprofits that, again, it's not solely for the benefit of the person who founded the organization or the CEO to walk away with public money for their own benefit. So salary could be an issue. For taxes is another criteria that distinguishes the two. Of course, nonprofits, they receive an exempt tax status. So in general, they only pay taxes on property. If they own property, they're required to pay taxes. But other than that, they're exempt from all other taxes. And of course, for-profits are not. Ownership of nonprofits, it belongs to the public and the people that they serve. Ownership in public organizations or for-profit organizations is going to be their stockholders, or if it's small organization, it will be just limited to that corporation or that LLC or sole proprietor. And another issue is, how do you measure success? How do nonprofits or for-profits measure success? For nonprofits, it's usually in the services that you deliver and the impact that nonprofit has in the community. And for-profit is your profits. You'll know if you're being successful, if you're making money, if you're not reaching your profit levels over time. You know, of course, you can always reassess that, but you might be being involved in a volunteer status as opposed to a for-profit organization, because that's the goal, to make money.
Hey, Brenda.
Yes.
Brenda, sorry. Tim asked a question,
Okay.
and I thought it was a good one. Okay. If the not-for-profit board is paid, is there a limit as to how much they can be paid, or are they employees of the not-for-profit that also serve as the board? I'm going to unmute Tim so if he can.
They're not employees of the organization, number one. They typically do not receive salaries. They're not paid. Those are volunteer positions. The only situation that I'm aware of, if there is some unique service that board needs that they can't find anyplace else, and there's a board member who can deliver that service, and the board as a group agrees to pay for that particular service, then yes. But in general, the board members are not employees. They're volunteers and they're unpaid positions.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay.
Good question.
That's a good question. Even though they do the work of an employee, they could be, you want a working board. You want your board to be equipped with the skills and the knowledge to help further the mission of the organization. So you want them to be a working board, which is
an experienced board too, right? So a lot of times.
I can't hear you. I lost your voice. No, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Are you there? Okay, there you are. Can you hear Nairobi?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear Kim?
I can't hear at all. Uh-oh.
I can't hear her either.
Can you send her a
Kim,
note?
check the chat.
In chat.
She says, tell Brenda to keep going.
Okay. All right, thank you, I will. So the other issue, there are two more distinctions for grant funding. Nonprofits are, and usually when grants are available, they will set eligibility requirements, and typically they want to see your 501c3 determination letter from IRS. So that could be from the government, the state, foundations, whomever. For for-profit organizations, I think within maybe the last 15 years, some for-profit organizations or some grantors have made grants available to for-profit organizations, but that's not generally the case. Usually if they set it up as a contract, that's usually the best mechanism that's used for a for-profit organization if a funder has some particular project or service they want delivered, and they recognize that there are nonprofits and for-profits that could fulfill that might happen. But in general, that's not true for for-profits. Now it's very interesting now with the virus funding that's coming down the track. You know, they've already sent, SBA already has, you know, a lot of money to make available to individuals for for-profit organizations where they can actually secure a loan, and if they meet certain criteria, that loan would turn into a grant. So that's kind of a unique situation, but there'll probably be more of that over time. But in general, no. I did, as a matter of fact, one of my for-profit organization, I gained a contract from a school district in Hillsborough County, Florida, to deliver services. So it just depends on the funder. If the funder says, well, we recognize that for certain skills, typically nonprofits don't deliver those, so they'll open the territory, so to speak, to make funding available to also for-profits. Okay, and then the last thing I think that distinguishes a for-profit from a nonprofit is the reporting requirements. For nonprofits, they have annual reporting requirements to IRS. They submit, depending on your budget level, they submit what's called a 990 form, and that's a requirement. If that doesn't happen, they're really strict about it. They can snatch your 501c3, and there's a whole list of them on the internet. You can see they've just taken, because they haven't maintained that submitting the required information to IRS. Well, they don't know if you're still eligible for that status or not. And so if you don't let them know, you know, kind of what your year's work is, they're going to snatch it from you. For a for-profit organization, of course, you have your annual reports. Depending on the state that you're in, there's certain reporting requirements you have as a for-profit. In Florida, it's called an annual report. And there are no state taxes in Florida, so you have to pay any money. You just have to let them know if you've changed your address or your board of directors. In Illinois, because I'm new back to Illinois, I'm not quite as sure. I know they have an excise tax that's due like April 15th, but I think there's also an annual report, because they want to track organizations. And so typically or generally that's usually, letting them know who your officers are, your physical location, things like that. Any questions? Okay, so does that move you one way or the other in terms of becoming a nonprofit or a for-profit?
What do you think, Maria? Because you were considering, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can
now
hear
I
you now.
can.
Yay.
Um,
Okay.
I think for profit because I think it's a lot of, I think a lot of paperwork. You know what I mean? It's going to be a lot of getting people or like having the same ideas. I don't know. I feel for profit right now,
Mhm.
sticking with it only because of the I I don't know. I don't know. I'm just thinking per profit now that you explained it more.
Mhm. I
And
mean,
it's okay to be a for-profit.
both
Mhm.
require a lot of work. I always tell people, to have a nonprofit, you really got to have a passion for it because it is more work. There are more requirements. There are more requirements that
Yeah, I
take.
think that's what it is. The more requirements that you have to, and
And you got to be willing to pass that baton.
yeah,
What if your board decides they no longer need you? And now you've given your passion, your life dream, your desire, your idea.
right.
And so and that's okay under certain, it depends.
Because,
It's like I think about PUP.
Mm.
I'm sorry.
because even if it is your idea, again, the idea is to serve the public.
Right.
And so that idea shouldn't be diminished just because you're not leading it.
Right. And
Right.
that right there comes into like his Peoria Hispanics Chamber of Commerce. Like my brother and this lawyer started it, but they're not as far as I know, they're not on the board anymore. They just got it going, and now
Right.
there's
Because
more.
they're so happy that now there's somebody else who has
Right.
grabbed onto that mission and they're still delivering that service or fulfilling that need. So that's really the primary purpose in the first place. So it's like keeping first things first.
Yeah.
So as long as that still is being realized, then that they, if they're earnest and honest about their intention to deliver services, that should be okay. But when
Mhm.
people enter the nonprofit arena and their intentions are self-fulfilling, it's just trouble.
Mhm.
But this is the stage to decide because there are requirements, but there are blessings too.
Tim.
I think
What were you going to say about PUP?
I was just going to say they're a perfect example of a great not-for-profit. Their idea, they have the idea, they want that idea to continue. Although they've had the same board for the whole 6 years. So, they are dealing with that too. But it's a small organization. I know you're working with them, but they're mission driven.
And it's easy. I think it becomes easy and comfortable when it's kind of the same people, but it's harder for them to grow.
It's control thing. I
Control.
think Tim has a question.
Yes.
Hi. Do nonprofits have to file tax returns the same way that a regular corporation does?
No, it's a 990 form.
Okay, that is the tax
And
return.
sometimes it's really a
Okay.
short form. It's just a card, or you can go online. It's not
And fill out the whole thing.
right. It's not extensive. Okay. It's not extensive like filing your tax returns.
Okay.
They know basic information, or this is the service you provide. This is, the budget maybe for your organization. It's really not extensive. If you're making, if your nonprofit is like a YMCA, then your reporting is going to be a little bit more detailed.
Okay.
But they bring in a lot of money. So
because I've seen the 990 for.
And they have staff to pull that off too.
I've seen the 990 for one of the hospital systems here in Peoria, and it's
right.
It's quite an impressive form, to put it mildly.
Right. But that just the size of the organization and the level of funding that they're receiving is going to dictate more reporting.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, I haven't convinced anybody either yay or nay yet. That's okay. That's okay. You got time. You got time.
I think most of us are small businesses. I think I know, like Stacy. Stacy is an independent business owner, so she would not. I'm trying to unmute you, Stacy. There we go. Uh-oh.
No, I just unmuted myself.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So, like Stacy, she's an independent business woman. You
Mhm.
know, they have small businesses, so it wouldn't make sense. I know that Nicole, your business is going to be for profit, correct?
Where'd she go?
There we go.
I'm on there.
I think we're both doing it simultaneously.
Sorry.
That's okay. The one now, yes. A couple of years ago, I had looked into a nonprofit, and I've kind of put that one on hold for now, but it's still in the back of my mind as a possibility eventually.
Mhm. So Stacy, what about you? So it seems like, you know, for the type of business or service you're delivering, your choice is maybe centered around the type of entity, whether or not it's a LLC or a corporation. Have you already established what you want to be? Stacy?
Not for sure, no.
Not yet?
I would like to probably be an LLC eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to figure out how to get there.
Right, because you know, if you're a sole proprietor, you know, you take all the risks are assumed personally for that business. And you want to kind of move away, you want some protection, you know, in this suitcase world, you want some protection against that. You would never want be in a situation where someone brought a suit against you and they could, you know, file against you personally, your home, your property, things like that. So that's something we probably can talk about a little bit more, or maybe you've already talked with an attorney about it, but it is an issue of kind of protecting yourself from any possibilities of damages or people coming after you for whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm. LLC is easy. I think I had that discussion with Nairobi.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Nairobi, did you decide whether or not you're going to incorporate?
I'm still thinking about it. I think my biggest problem is the financial.
Mm-hmm. Financial, just the cost of filing a nonprofit, or
Yeah.
the cost of startup, or?
The cost of filing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right.
Okay, we'll get there. Okay, so we're going to cover one more issue, and hopefully this process will help you move to the next stage, and that is to write a problem statement. And I don't think I asked that question of Nicole when we met at our last training, but a problem statement is intended to help identify that need that you have a desire to fulfill. And in a problem statement, you also want to focus a little bit on, given you've identified the need, what's the solution? Because you're not just in it just to be in it, but you're in it to solve some particular problem, and some particular problem based upon your idea or your group's idea about how that can happen. And in writing a problem statement up front, you can really help establish kind of the boundaries for what you're considering, not the whole world, but just this particular problem. So in the problem statement, I'm going to ask you to prepare and send back to me via email before we meet again. The problem statement would answer the 5 W's. Okay, so we were in the 5 W's is the what, why, where, when, and who. Why does the problem exist? And I'll send you something in writing because I should have prepared that for you. But you know, the problem you see or the need that you see, why do you believe it exists? And that's just from you. You don't have to, like, you can do some research, but I think it's helpful. But why does this need exist? Number 2, who does it exist for? So who has this need? Is it young girls? Is it young children? Is it senior citizens? Who needs to have this service? Or who needs to have this particular support or product? Because it could be a product. It doesn't have to be a service. It could be a product.
What if you're like me and I want to help so many people through like the market. I have you know what I mean? I want to help vendors. I want to help the shoppers. I want to help, you know, people, their craft, you know, expose people to different cultures and different stuff. I mean, it's more than just one thing.
Well, we're going to narrow it down because the challenge is, how do you serve all those audiences and be successful or have impact?
Mm-hmm.
So I would prioritize which of those audiences has the greatest need that you feel you have the greatest capacity to address, and prioritize them. So with this group, this is why the need exists, and this is how I can address the need. So one of those other W's is, where are you going to deliver this service or product? Where does the need exist? Did I say what? I didn't give you what, right?
No, you didn't give us what.
What is it?
What is the problem?
What is the need? What is the problem? And problem is, it's not necessarily a problem, you know, but that's what it's called, a problem statement. But what is it?
Well, like for example,
what is it that keeps you up at night? Or maybe not that. What is it that really inspires you?
or like for example, for Stacy, in her cleaning business, the need is that there are maybe busy people who work a lot of hours who don't have time to take care of their house the way that they would like to, so they need that service. So it you know, that's just an example of,
it doesn't have to be complicated or long. It's just as simple as that. There are people out there who are working, but they need their homes clean, and they need to clean well. So the problem statement doesn't have to be paragraphs and paragraphs. I didn't say that. It doesn't have to be long, but let it flow from you, and then put it aside for a minute and review it, think about it. Again, you don't necessarily have to do research, but you can if you want, just to support, you know, your belief that it even exists. And then when does that problem exist? Is it year round? Is it seasonal? Is it certain times of the day? So I say the 5 W's. If you can just focus on answering those questions: why does the need exist? What is the need? Who has the need? Where is the need? And when does it happen? You know, there was a time, you know, before we had solar panels. Hi, Hey, who is that? Solar panels.
That's Howie.
Solar roofs, before energy became, such, a costly endeavor and challenge and not environmental, we didn't have solar panels, but somebody decided, here's a way that we can save our environment, still have energy at a lower cost. And thus the solar industry just took off. They just fulfilled a need. But regardless of it, of whether it is a for-profit or nonprofit, your challenge, my challenge, is to find the need and fulfill it. It can't be just your opinion. So after we complete this problem statement, your analysis of what the problem is, then we'll hone in a little bit more just to determine kind of the real issues.
Uh-oh.
Right. We'll focus in a little bit more, because we will either prepare a business plan or write a proposal or a strategic plan to help get to the next step. Usually an important step is funding. Nonprofit or for-profit, you need funding. And beyond your own personal resources, you're going to need funding, you're going to need people, you're going to need equipment, some level of assets to bring that kind of under an umbrella that you can begin to address the issue. And you want to be successful in the process. So hopefully, as you go through this, it will open up some new thoughts, cause you to ask more questions. As many questions as one can anticipate, the better off you are. You have to anticipate, what may be some challenges for your organization to operate properly. The problem statement, I call it, it enables you to be the boss. And it's an acronym for building, organization, systems, and structure. Those are all important requirements to have a successful business. You got to have a building, or you have to be building within that business. You have to have an organizational structure. You have to have systems within that organization. Of course, a structure like the entity that you're going to operate within. To be the boss.
I like that.
So questions. I give yourself some time, make a couple drafts. I'll give you my email so you can send it back to me maybe like a week before the next training, so I can have opportunity to review and ask questions if you want. It's all up to you. It's all in your ability, your realm to make a difference and move to the next steps. And there are steps, but you can do it. You have the capacity to do it. I know it already, or you wouldn't even be on this call.
I like having the 5 W's. I've already written, the problem statement once. So now I can go back with those 5 W's, and I'm like you, I don't like the word problem, but you really, I've heard this before. If you're going to open your own business, if you're going to start a business, you need to know what's the issue you're solving. What are you providing? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm, I can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And will people pay for it?
Will people pay for it?
Will people pay for it? If you're a for-profit.
Right. If you're a for-profit, will they pay for it? If you're a nonprofit, will they come? Will the people that you serve, will they come? Have you accurately identified the need? In the nonprofit world, funders pose the question, so what? Meaning, You've delivered these services, so what does it matter? Because you
What
want
doesn't matter?
it to matter. So what? For for-profits, it is, do I have enough money to open the door? Can I afford, to continue this? Have I accurately identified the need? And am I fulfilling it in a way that people will pay for the delivery of that product or service?
Right. So I like the what, why, where, when.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you, Brenda.
Okay, any questions, anybody?
At, so when did you hear about the small business?
Well, I got an email. I got an email over the weekend. I got an email with the link to